While it might sound scary, CPU overclocking really isn't that hard. All you have to do is navigate to your computer's BIOS, which I actually have multiple videos and shorts on, and then find your overclocking tab. And every BIOS is going to look a little bit different, but after poking around a little bit, it shouldn't be that hard to find it. Now, as you can see here, my CPU is already running overclocked, and this is because I just went and hit restore defaults, because I'm just showing you kind of what you do to overclock. I already have kind of found where this chip is stable at. Maybe in a future video, I will be taking a new CPU that I'm familiar with and overclocking that, but I'm not making money and I only have one CPU right now, so you'll have to wait for the GPU overclocking video to see how to do that with, a brand new chip and what to do with that. But anyway, the main thing you're going to be working with, whether you're Intel, AMD, or I don't know, maybe you built your own chip yourself somehow, is CPU ratio. And this is a multiplier that is multiplied by the base clock. So your base clock by default is 100. I like to just type in 100 because that's, easier for me to look at and see. And then your CPU ratio by default on this chip, so the AMD Ryzen 5 3600, is 3.6. 3.6 times 100 is 36. 36 times 100 is 3600 megahertz. Now, as you can see up here, I was running at 4220 megahertz, so 4220. So I'm just going to put that in here. So 42.25, and there we go. I went ahead and put that in. Now, I would suggest when you're starting to kind of say, okay, what's the boost speed of my processor? And you can find that on an official page like AMD's website for a processor or Intel's website. And then I'd start at that and then try bumping up your CPU ratio on top of that. But you aren't going to be able to go faster if you don't give your processor a little bit more juice. So how do you do that? You're going to want to find your power settings and switch your CPU power to whatever your overclocking override thing is. Mine's called AMD overclocking. Yours might be called something entirely different. So I'm going to set my CPU core voltage to 1.4 volts. Now, normally this chip would be running about 1.35. So I'm adding a decent bit of voltage, about, 550 millivolts, I guess. But that's not an insane amount, and it's probably not going to be that detrimental to your chip overall. I mean, it's more, and it will make it die sooner, but also this is a much older chip, and so who really cares? If it dies, it's already approaching the end of its life. Might as well get a little bit more juice out of it while it's still going. And to be honest, yes, overclocking degrades your system, as in the long run, it'll die a bit faster, but in my experience, it really isn't as scary as it seems. I have killed one memory stick overclocking, and I was ramming like 1.25 or maybe 1.3 volts through it for a long time, and I think that was also just a kind of fluke. Overclocking is not near as dangerous as it sounds. So, I'm going to go down and set this to 1.4 like I said, but then also since I have an AMD processor, I'm going to overclock my Infinity Fabric. Now, the Infinity Fabric is the interconnect between your individual CCXs, or core complex module things. Core complexes. And they will hold the cores on them. And since it's a chiplet design, you need some type of interconnect to let them communicate. And basically, the faster that interconnect is running, the better your computer is going to be able to run. So I know that this chip can handle 1867 megahertz at 1.15 volts on the SoC. So you once again have to figure this out. And this is one setting where if you go above, you're going to have to reset your CMOS. It's going to completely fail to boot, fail to post everything. But you just reset your CMOS and you should be right back into your BIOS and everything's fine. It's, a little scary, but it's really not that bad. CPU core, usually you can at least get back into the BIOS unless you do something ridiculous. But before you do any of this, just make sure you can reset your CMOS. But yeah, that's basically the basics of overclocking a CPU. All you need to do is know how to change your CPU ratio and your voltage. And that's literally it for overclocking a CPU. Just set it to a voltage that you're comfortable with. Maybe add 50 millivolts first or something. And then try to push your clocks until it crashes. Add a little bit more voltage to see if you can get it stable at that higher speed. And then decide, are you okay with a slightly more risk for more power? Or do you want to walk it back a bit? And then from there, you just kind of figure it out. It's just find a decent starting point. I'd say here 1.4, you can look up what's a good voltage for your chip to run at, and then find a pretty likely to be stable starting point for your CPU multiplier. Set them, run Prime 95. If it runs stably, yay. If it doesn't, boo. And then just push everything a little bit higher. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And I will be putting out a more detailed CPU overclocking video at some point in the future.